First, we'll begin by examining some of the cultural contexts of changing worldviews. Looking at the first slide by Leonardo da Vinci, The Vitruvian Man, from the Italian Renaissance, 1490. This image gives us a perfect image of traditional semiotics. Here we see man perfectly poised, perfectly balanced, supported by God in this Christian drawing, which comes from Leonardo's notebook. It's important to notice that he is a man, because in the Renaissance, man was considered to be the highest of God's creation. In the Renaissance, women were considered inferior to men. It's also important to notice the man's age. He's not young, he's not old. He's a mature man in the prime of life, which is the time that the Renaissance people believed was the ideal time for a man. Notice that he's naked. There's an absolute truth meaning for that too. Often today we'll even talk about the naked truth, the bare truth. The man is naked to show that Leonardo is trying to reveal to us an absolute truth. Notice that the man is posed in two positions at the same time, with his arms and legs outstretched, brushing the edges of the two most perfect geometrical shapes, the circle and the square. Many cultures agree on the meanings of these archetypal shapes. The square is the symbol of the earth, of the material world, physical reality. The circle is the symbol of heaven, spiritual matters, the divine. Man's outstretched hands and feet brush the edges of both heaven and earth, showing the Renaissance belief and optimism in human reason, God's gift to human beings, the belief that human reason could unlock all the mysteries of both heaven and earth. So this work by Leonardo shows us that worldview. Imagine that the Vitruvian Man is almost up on a pedestal, because the Christians believe that man is God's highest creation. He is up on a pedestal, supported by God, his reason given by God, his perfect form in the image of God. That is the traditional semiotics point of view. Remember that in this traditional semiotics point of view is firmly grounded in the Christian world in Europe. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, Christianity was compulsory in Europe. In other words, everybody really almost had to be a Christian. People that were not Christians would be punished severely, tormented publicly, branded heretics, even killed. Therefore, Christianity was pretty much a universal in Christian Europe. After the Renaissance, the Christian world changed dramatically. During the Baroque period, the Christian church divided into two major camps. Before this period, all Christians were essentially what we today call Catholics. After the Renaissance, in the next period, some Christians began to protest what they saw as the excesses of the Catholic Church, and a second branch of Christianity was formed, the Protestants. The Catholics and Protestants, both Christians, disagreed very strongly on many very important issues of their faith. So far from a single view as promoted in the earlier periods, even within Christianity we start to see very strong divisions of faith. A crisis of faith, if you will. Then, with the discovery of so-called new worlds, Europeans learning about cultures and religions of many different people from many different places in the world, more crises of faith occurred, as Christians realized that many other people had many other religions that they believed just as strongly as the Christians did. So this idea of a unified God, this comfortable sense of security, starts to fall apart. Things escalate. These crises of faith grows stronger and stronger. Let's just fast forward, though, to the year 1900. This is the year that our philosopher, discussed in our module, Friedrich Nietzsche, made a proclamation that shocked the world. In the year 1900, Nietzsche boldly proclaimed, "God is dead." Now, Nietzsche did not really mean that God is dead per se. Rather, the idea of a unified one idea of God is what was dead. Nietzsche said, if God is dead, we no longer have that comfortable security, that pedestal that Renaissance people were able to rest on in the past. Instead, we are teetering over a precipice, and we look down and see what Nietzsche referred to as the void. For the void, try to picture a very high cliff that you look down and you cannot see the bottom of. There's nothing down there. That's the void. It seems very frightening at first, but Nietzsche said we should not fear the void. Nietzsche urged us to embrace the void, even to dive into the void. With God being dead, there would be no safety nets to catch us, but this is what he believed we should do: embrace the void. In 1960, in Paris, France, a young artist named Yves Klein was reading the works of Nietzsche. He became very interested in Nietzsche's idea of the void and decided to do a work of performance art to illustrate Nietzsche's philosophy. As we see in this slide, entitled "The Void," Yves Klein at the time was living in the second-story Paris apartment, and he leapt out of the window of his second-story apartment, as we can see through this slide, swan diving into the void. The artist had no safety net to catch him, just as Nietzsche's theory of the void said, we have no safety net. Luckily, the artist escaped with a few minor scratches and bruises, but he could have been seriously hurt. His point was, he wanted to illustrate the void. Now let's picture this trajectory. Going back to the Vitruvian man, we see man high on the pedestal, supported by God, secure in the confident faith in an absolute truth. In the second image, we see the artist swan diving through the void, true to Nietzsche's theory of the void. Now, for our third image. This is a work by Kazuma Yayoi called Infinity Room, 1965. In this work, the artist has landed into the world of postmodern simulation. That is the artist depicted in the picture, laying there on the pillows. For this work, Yayoi was invited by a prominent New York gallery to come and do a work of art for their gallery. They gave her a large room that she could do anything she wanted. The first thing she did was cover every inch of the room, walls, ceiling, and floor, with mirrors. Mirrors all over the room. Then she proceeded to sew by hand thousands of pillows made of polka dot fabric, which she then filled the room with. She titled this work Infinity Room. In this work, as you can imagine, when you walk into the Infinity Room, not only are the millions of polka dots reflected for all infinity, but anyone who goes into the room is reflected for all infinity. In the Infinity Room, we have what I like to call the postmodern funhouse mirror effect. Rather than an absolute truth being revealed in a work of art, in postmodernism we have signs reflecting signs reflecting signs, with no absolute truth in sight.